safety picture.
Yeah, it's really cool.
It's two houses down from my house.
Okay, we're going to get started. January 31st, Committee of the Whole meeting regarding public safety. We have Utica Police Department, as well as the Utica Fire Department and our budget director here. Basically, what we want to do, as a council, I know Councilperson Classimo Testa had some concerns and some questions on what's going on with the UPD, with the recent incidents that we've had in the past couple of weeks. And as far as getting an update with the fire department on construction and the grant for the 8 firefighters. And so we'll start with Councilperson Classimo Testa. Go ahead, you could ask your questions.
Good evening, guys. How's everyone doing?
Hello.
Okay, so I guess we had a little brief discussion last meeting in regards to what happened at Lillian Cooper Apartments in regards to the fire department entering the building. Somebody had a gun, so on and so forth. So I kind of just wanted to touch base with the cities on behalf of the police department, fire department, codes, whatever, what their game plan is to kind of try and get Lillian Cooper Apartments under wrap.
So just to recap what happened at the Lillian Cooper Apartments, what happened was there was a tenant that was in the building that was dealing with someone that threatened him with a handgun. Basically, the fire department and the police department kind of responded. They were blind because they pulled the fire alarm rather than call 911. So both the fire department and the police department responded here thinking that it was potentially some type of fire hazard. What they quickly found out, the fire department got there first, and they were confronted by a guy running out the building with a handgun. Our officers responded shortly thereafter and apprehended the person with the handgun. As far as a focus of enforcement and nuisance abatement, my understanding nuisance abatement has been looked at. Is that correct?
So indirectly, our conversation with codes is that is a part of the pilot agreement. I believe that's part of the pilot agreement with William Cooper. The terms of the agreement are that they'll make improvements to the building to include video surveillance and other and to fix other codes issues that they have. Otherwise, they could lose the money that's granted to them in the pilot agreement.
And I understand you don't want to leave anybody, you don't want to leave the building vacant. Obviously, I understand that. You would have to relocate some of these people into an apartment. But, I mean, the response that the fire department and the police department has given to Lillian Cooper has far out exceeded what I think the benefit to that neighborhood would be, so to speak. So I would think that even if they don't file up with the pilot program, I mean, I don't see what other option that the city would have, especially since they have that upper hand with them in regards to it.
Yeah, and I know being on the fire department, I know the protocol is if there's some involved in a shooting or a stabbing or anything that's physical in nature, usually the police department will coordinate with the fire department to stand back until the scene is clear. So what they'll do is they'll make sure the scene is clear. The UPD will go in and say, okay, you guys can come in and take care of the victim or whatever it may have been.
In this particular case, though, it was just dispatched as an automatic alarm on fire. So it just came in as an alarm activation. So as a matter of course, we're just going there for a normal alarm activation.
Right.
They were going up the stairs, like Chief Williams said. They were notified that that wasn't the situation, that there was a domestic or a fight that was occurring. So there was no pre-knowledge of it. They were just going in to investigate, and that's what
They weren't confronted with the person with the gun. They were told by another woman
Yeah,
that
they
there
were
was a
told by
person
a
with a
woman.
gun.
They pointed out.
While that she was telling them, she noticed the guy walking across the street. She said, "There he is." And
Right.
that's
As far as your knowledge, you had the automatic alarm. You're responding like we always respond.
Yeah.
No knowledge of any firearms at all.
there are inspections
And
scheduled there. as well.
Unfortunately, it does happen at times, and it was just bad timing right there.
Sure.
That's all it was. Anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I got several things. I can go on all night. The other thing that I had, in regards to that, we had talked with Chief Williams about maybe corresponding with the fire department. There was an incident that was brought to my attention where there was a sex offender in the building that the police department was looking for. So I had discussed with them about maybe including the fire department in with some of the briefings. I know that they had discussed that, but just to kind of say, hey, listen, this is a person of interest. If you happen to come across them, like, this is the type of person that you should watch out for. Because a person that was there did see it on Facebook. And they were able to do that. They didn't see it as a correspondence, I guess, through communications between police and fire. So I was just, maybe discussing, maybe that's something that they could include the fire department in some of their briefings in regards to that.
And we can certainly do that. We generate a lot of information through the Mohawk Valley Crime Analysis Center. Some of it's only law enforcement sensitive, but there's certainly other information that we could share with the fire department.
Yeah, and then the other thing is in our CAD system, if there's known issues at a certain address, if they're put into a where, we will get notified that either the police have had multiple activities there in the previous 30 days or something, so, or maybe they've been there and there was a weapon involved. They'll advise us of that, so that'll show up in our CAD system when the fire department is dispatched.
And I mean, and that's another thing too, like obviously this incident at Lillian Cooper Apartments wasn't a regular occurrence, but I mean, you never know with everything that's been going on inside the city with firearms and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe there could be a further discussion that, and I know the police department is very limited into the resources that they have as well, but maybe if you do have an incident of a call for a fire of automatic alarm, that you had maybe 20 incidents at a specific place, maybe the police department could go and just an automatic with that alarm and maybe respond with them and so on and so forth, which I know majority of the time that they do.
Yeah, they normally, as long as whenever they have a car free, they're usually going. And, but yeah, so like the assistant chief said, we are following up with the codes department. We are conducting a re-inspection of the entire building at 276 Genesee Street. And just for some background there, my sister was a resident there for 18 years. We moved her out back in September due to the amount of issues that we were consistently dealing with. The tenants a lot of the tenants are good people, but it's that percentage that just cause a lot of problems at the building.
Now, do they have a manager that's actually designated there, or do the people travel from out of state and come here?
Last I knew, they had a manager filling in from Syracuse area, so that could have changed by now.
That's another huge
Did you get
thing.
any information on that?
I think the owner's out of Ohio.
We discussed that.
Yeah, that
we
owner
had
out of
we had a
Ohio.
conference. We did have a teleconference with
Yeah.
them and made it clear to them what the issues were, and they said they had a difficult time finding a good local property manager. They've gone through several, and
I mean, nobody could be worse than the tenants that you have, which is understandable.
Right.
Maybe nobody wants to do that until you clean it up, which that could be, not just necessarily the managers that are overseeing the building, but the owners actually themselves. And that goes back to one of the original pieces of legislation that I had in committee, and it would be mandated that they would have to have an owner-occupied person that would, within a 25-mile limit to be there. I mean, so that's maybe something that we could discuss. I mean, you don't want to do it for one person, but obviously if this becomes an issue with other buildings, that's definitely, a piece that we can actually discuss.
it seems interesting. A lot of these multi-unit complexes seem to fight over the good property managers. You see the good ones go from complex to complex,
Yeah.
and I think has to do with pay and benefits.
So I should quit teaching and go be a property manager? I mean, at this point in time, something might sound a little
Why
better
shouldn't
than.
it be, yeah, we worked at that.
We can get a better answer to that in 2 days.
Yeah, right.
For the, not for quitting
No,
the job,
yeah, no, I
get it.
but
I get it.
where their manager is,
Right.
if they got one on site yet.
I mean, I won't hog up, you can come back to me if you wanna, I got definitely a couple of
The
things that
question I
wanna ask.
had with the fire department, I know I was asked several times, what's the progress of Engine 1? What's the progress of Central? Could you explain? I know there might have been a delay because of the HVAC system or something, that's what I heard, but
That's,
it was-
we're waiting on
was-
that
yeah,
for sure. I don't know if that's really a delay. I mean, we started it.
Yeah.
I'll let the chief speak more heavily into it than me, but we are waiting for HVAC parts for sure.
Yeah, so materials delays have really impacted the project. The HVAC system, so the entire HVAC system for that building had to be rebuilt and re-engineered. And we have the old system in place right now. Obviously, last week we suffered another catastrophic break in the plumbing. So the plumbing's so corroded at this point, so as soon as the plumber touches the pipe, it just falls apart. So the entire west side.
where is this? This is at,
This is at Central Fire
The newer-
Station
the newer
that we have.
Imagine
the,
how much better Whitesville Street is.
Yeah, so there was one of the reasons why we had why I chose Central to start working on, because whenever you turn the heating system on for the last 5 or 6 years, it just rains in the building. So it's multiple leaks. The corrosion issues on the HVAC system have just been tremendous. So during the course of that, they ordered all the wall mount units back in June of '22. We don't have a ship date until April of this year. And the materials delays, the Pleiades probably going through the same thing, their materials delays as well. We're making some modifications, moving some people around in the next week or so, and we're abandoning that west side of the building, so this way the contractors can just go to and get that gutted and get that project moving a little bit quicker. They've made great strides on the HVAC system, on the new system. There's a lot of plumbing, a substantial amount of engineering, plumbing, welding going on right now, so we're progressing. It's just a lot slower than I had hoped for. Knowing now, if I knew what I know now,
Right.
I would have asked for some delays on the start of it until we had some more materials stockpiled, but unfortunately, we're at where we're at. Again, the roof won't be done until April. HVAC, we're still waiting on. We can't finish walls until the HVAC is installed. We can't finish closing up the downstairs until the HVAC is installed. We can't finish flooring and everything. We're at the whim of that right now.
Who is doing the
Could I-
HVAC? I'm sorry.
One question.
Brantley's was awarded the HVAC. General contractors, Priori. We do have the bathrooms all up and running now, so that's a good thing for those guys. So the bathrooms are up to date. They're usable now, but there's a lot of work to be done at the station. As far as Station 1 goes, that should be going out to bid shortly. Engineering has been done on it, so that should be going out. The roof and parapet reconstruction is still scheduled to be started in April. A lot of the work, a lot of the roof leak is attributed to the parapet and how much the brick is degraded. So there's a lot of rebuilding that masons have to do before we can even get that roof done. But that should be starting in April. We have a estimated completion date of May 31st for the roof and parapet work. We'll see. That's again, we're at the whim of weather when
Right.
it comes to that.
Does that need an HVAC system as well there?
That'll have.
We ordered already, hopefully we ordered it.
Yeah, so we,
Why they don't
we
want
did
a
put
furnace
two
in their
new-
living room?
We put 2 new furnaces in there already, and there's gonna be a couple other small updates along with the interior work that has to be done with the asbestos abatement, the lead abatement, the bathroom facilities, plumbing upgrades, electrical upgrades, so that should be going out hopefully sooner than later.
Yeah, I can't believe these delays are taking, I mean,
Yeah,
it's,
it's.
we had
it's-
this thing, what, 2.5 years now, the COVID, and
Yeah,
it's still,
it's-
we're still in that delay mode. It's crazy.
The delays are everywhere. I just had a talk with a fire apparatus manufacturer last week. If we were to order a fire truck today, we're not gonna see it until the fall of 2025.
Follow what?
Fall of 2025, we're looking at a 30 to 36 month delivery time if we were to order a fire truck today. And also,
Let's take really good care of the ones we got, right?
we're trying, you know. But the other thing that we can expect in the fire apparatus is a 6 to 8% price increase quarterly. So if we buy a fire truck today, we can lock it in for a little less than $1 million. If we wait till after March 10th, it'll be over $1 million. If we wait to the following quarter, the price increases and the delivery times are just going out the window right now. So we're anticipating some, there's going to be delays, so we got to try to stay ahead of it. We just got estimates in for Shepherd Place repairs. That estimate is $1.2 million. Building was built in 1914. There's a ton of corrosion to the floor, the apparatus floor. We're parking a heavy fire truck over a basement. So that's something that we're going to have to weigh out. Is that building worth the $1.2 million investment, and have to go back at it again in 15 years or 10 years? It's the same thing with the Knight Square Fire Station. That estimate is over $2 million. I literally just got it in an email, so I gotta look at that a little bit more so we can go through it.
So we will be coming back to you. We're gonna get the budget in, and then
we'll be meeting with Scott and the mayor to sit down, because these numbers are too big. We don't have the borrowing capacity that you provided for us is not enough money. Also with Central, that, you know, we knew that was gonna be over, and it was. We
Yep.
put some money away towards it.
Yep.
But now we're getting better numbers, so you'll hear from us somewhere near the end of February, because then we have some decisions to make. The council will have some decisions to make.
I think, you know, me personally, and anybody else could speak, I definitely think that if we have COVID money left, that we gotta reprioritize. Because guess what, we now have, and I love it, a splash pad, skate parks, so on and so forth, that we've spent millions and millions of dollars on. And yet, you're gonna have to come back to borrow us for money to fix firehouses that should have been a priority for the past 12 years. Which again, I mean, I understand everybody's concern, but, I mean, it might be time to reprioritize how we spend those funds and continue to spend the rest of those $30 million in funds towards the city. And that's just my personal opinion, because I can't see borrowing for this type of funds, knowing that we've invested how many millions in skate parks and so on and so forth, when this is a serious priority where our employees in the city actually live and work.
So all the ARPA, when I say all, I think there's maybe $300,000 or $400,000 left that hasn't been allocated. Both
we really
count,
need to
both Mike Leany, and Sam Testa through Melissa, has reached out to me. We'll be back down here after the budget comes out to kind of go through where all those projects are. We've provided you updates in the past, but there really has been no questions. And so, I'm gonna go through all the projects and kind of say where we are on them, because that's really the questions I would think you would be asking. The splash pad, when is it gonna be installed? Are we on budget?
Well, you told me it was the end of April the last time I asked you about that,
Yes.
because I told you my daughter was gonna be here if, you know, it wasn't completed in a certain amount of time.
You know, and-
But in regards to that, so I guess maybe I would just ask, instead of the projects that have already been started, fine, that money's already been allocated. Let's talk about the funding that we've allocated but haven't started any of the projects with, I guess would be my next issue.
They've all been started.
They've all been started, so Bailey View's been
They're-
started, everyone, I mean, the
Valley View,
skate,
we're just awaiting, that's coming back.
the second skate
That's
park's
coming
been
back next
started,
week.
the
That's
dog parks have been started,
Oh
everything's
my
been
God,
started.
dog park's done. The one in North Utica's done.
Oh, I thought the one,
The one up.
The one in
at-
East
the one
Utica?
up- The one up.
It's got, the grass has gotta be
Yeah, the
planted and
grass,
that
yeah.
stuff, but
Yeah,
everything else is
The one up on
done.
Welsh, is it Welsh Bush?
Yeah.
Welsh Bush.
what about the $10 million that they had allocated for the parkway?
That is in final engineering. You're gonna hear some
So again,
announcements.
I mean, again,
all right.
I think, again, back to the point, like, let's
Let's
reprioritize.
get to the public
So,
safety again.
you know what I mean?
I wanna just change the subject now. The SAFER grant. Any word on any departments getting anything? I know
No.
it's supposed to kick off December 16th. We have not heard from one.
September 21st was the last safer award by FEMA.
What was it?
September 21st of
Okay,
22.
so they haven't
New York
awarded
State.
since.
No,
No.
nationally.
Nationally.
I just looked it up, they just awarded 3, like in January 3rd of 2023, there was a couple that they awarded, it was on their website that I had
Well,
just
the
checked.
chief gets the email, and he checks with them, what,
Yeah.
every
I'll
week?
send you the New
2
York
weeks?
State, look, you can look it up right on the FEMA website yourself.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
It was
it's-
just January 3rd, but I mean, it was for not a huge, I mean, there are different municipalities throughout the federal government, it wasn't necessarily New York State.
So
They
there's
got
still
the
hope
award.
out there that we would maybe get the
Oh, yeah.
grant,
Yeah,
right?
I'm holding
We'll get
out
that
hope.
same-
Before we
the fire apparatus.
take any act as a council, I think we should wait and see if we get it. What else?
Do you, back to that safer grant, you know one way or another if you got it, right? I mean, did they send you something that says, sorry, you didn't qualify, or
No, we haven't
you
gotten
just
a-
keep waiting and waiting and
Yeah,
waiting and
We
hope?
have not gotten a denial letter, Heather.
But well, my question is, they do send denial letters?
Yeah, because
if-
we did get a denial letter for AFG grant, a fire grant.
Yeah, about a
which
month,
is
2 months
We don't know if all the
Yeah,
denial letters
yeah.
are out. Like, we
Yeah,
didn't
that was
get one, but
completely
we don't know if they're
different
done
from the
sending.
safer grant.
And there's no place that you can contact to say, hey, where are we, or what's going on, or
Other
it
than
doesn't
the
work like
senator's
that,
office,
right?
Senator Schumer would be,
Maybe we should just send a letter to Senator Schumer on behalf of the council.
Can I ask a related question? Where are we with what's the status of all of our 207As? Any change in any status of any of those?
I don't know when you were last updated. We did have one come off and get retired.
Okay,
Uh,
so we have 7 out now?
No, 5.
Five.
Just 5.
Five.
6 and then 5.
Okay,
A couple on long-term that we're hoping to come back to work.
But we don't know.
But we don't know.
So they're
I
not
mean,
technically,
likely,
so they're not technically 207As yet?
No, they're 207As and they're long-term.
But we expect them to,
Right, just
right.
nature of the injury they should.
Yeah, yeah, okay, okay,
You know, continue, that's a slow process.
right,
Uh,
right. Okay, all right, thank you, Chief.
Mr. Burmaster, go ahead.
I have a question. I know West Utica, the firehouse is in bad shape. Now, they used to have a firehouse on the state hospital, and I don't know if it's still operating, but it could house one truck. Have we looked into maybe moving the firehouse and moving to a structure that doesn't need as much repair and work out something with the state and use this building that might be sitting there? Because I know they used to have a fire truck when I was a kid.
Yeah, I'm not quite familiar with what building they
It's kind of in the middle of the state. It's kind of kitty corner to Brigham Young, and it's a road that goes actually to Noyes Street, and you can take it down, and you can come out on York, you can come down on Whitesboro, you can go out on Noyes. And they used to have a firehouse right there. It wasn't too far from the printing.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with the printing either.
No.
But
The
being a
ideal
kid,
situation
I just
would
figured
be
if it was one.
South Utica and one engine combined somewhere in between there.
You know-
That's the ideal situation with a brand-new firehouse. But obviously, the cost is gonna be astronomical, but
But
do
there
you have
was
any idea what it may be, Chief?
There was a building already, they
Yeah,
had
but
their own
it's
fire
gotta be just
department.
as old.
Yeah,
as
but
the one
I
with-
don't know what shape, or, you
Yeah.
know, anything would
It's a
be
good
better
thought,
than what
though.
we have in West
Yeah.
Utica.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just a concrete
You know,
floor and
um,
there's no basement underneath that would
you know,
hold a piece of equipment.
I just thought I'd throw it out there because, you know, West Utica, you know, it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. I've been up there 25 years working the elections, and it's horrible. It's absolutely terrible. But I just thought I'd throw it out there. And
Chief, any idea what the
So,
cost?
right now, the city, Saratoga Springs is building a new facility, they're about 9 million.
But they've also been awarded.
They've also been awarded 7.5 million
In
for,
grant
through
funding.
FEMA grant funding.
We're not going after these grants, which is
But-
a huge problem on our
But
behalf.
The,
too.
the key to get the FEMA grant funding for a fire station project is you gotta have land control, so you gotta have site. That building site has to be selected, it has to be under municipal control before you can go for that type of grant, so.
We do have all those
you-
plans though.
You gotta, those plans are outdated.
But still, I mean, even if we've got to reference something at the time to say,
Yeah,
hey,
but
if the city
we're
hasn't changed,
landlocked
they might
pretty
be
much.
outdated, but.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
But they
So-
still did the plans, is what I'm saying. So even if
Yeah.
you go look at them and use them as reference and say, hey, do we still have access to this parcel? I mean, that might be something that you
Yeah.
could talk
I'm
about.
sure the
They're
chief
not-
would love to have it if we can afford it, no doubt.
It
was like $80,000.
costs us $80,000.
2013 study was started, it was finished in 2014, I think it was like 40,000, 45,000.
There was just one that we just did. It was under your previous chief that it just cost us about $80,000 to do.
I definitely was not
Privy
in
to
this
that
position
information.
to, I have copies of the study, I mean, it's a building evaluation. But again, though, that study was done when downtown was not the way it is now. It was done without a hospital figured into the mix. It was done without our population being 69,000, whatever it was in the last census, in the most recent census. It was done with a 12 or 13,000 call a year call volume when we're up to over 17,000. So there's been some changes that would need to be addressed in any study or analysis that we do now.
Unless this study didn't get completed, we just wasted $80,000 on it. But when we were upstairs in the mayor's conference room, when it was within the time frame that the hospital was being built, everybody knew about it. We were talking about.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I think it recommended closing the Whitesboro Street Firehouse and Bleecker Street and combining them where the hospital is actually being built now.
Oh, it wasn't there, that was where Central.
Yeah, that would have been the new central, so they would have combined Whitesboro Street.
You're still talking
and
about the
Central.
2013 though, right?
I'm talking about the 2013, 2014
We're not aware of
study.
another one.
There was another one done. It was under George Clark. George Clark was the actual acting fire chief.
I think you're right.
Yeah, so we had talked about building a fire station where they're building the hospital parking garage.
Yeah, it wasn't
Yeah.
2013.
Under Clark being
I'm gonna go
chief.
back to UPD for a
He was
minute.
only chief for a short time, so.
Yeah.
You know, we had
I
the
don't even know
rash.
if I don't even know if you can get it. We should call George up, isn't
George, just
When he gets red in the face, you know he's
UPD. I just want to, I know we had the rash recently with the, and most likely it's related to gangs. Would you say that? I know you can't talk much about it, but
I could
more
speak
retaliatory,
somewhat
I
to
would
it.
imagine.
I know this much, is that we've looked at some of the instances we've had. We had 4 shootings, 2 homicides that were related to gunfire. We've had rapists that was going around, and it's just been a horrible month. What we have seen in each one of these cases is that there's been closures, and we expect that the one case I think that's open is gonna go to grand jury, so we expect to have an arrest made soon on that case. The problem, what we're seeing with all these cases, it's the same offenders. And if you look at the criminal reforms that were passed in 2019, bail reform, discovery, and raise the age, these are the same offenders we're seeing time and time again. It's failed legislation, it needs to be changed.
Yeah.
And it's not just the city of Utica. People say, oh, the city of Utica is bad. In comparison, if you look at comparable cities, we're actually doing better than them. But still, it's an issue. And until they change the state laws, it's gonna continue, unfortunately. I know the governor is gonna try to convince the state legislature to change bail reform, and she's gonna have her hands full. Especially the downstate legislators, they're gonna balk. But, and what I'm proud of is the fact that, our investigators and officers are working hard in these cases. We're making an arrest, but we're seeing the same offenders over and over again. I'll give you an example. The juvenile, the 17-year-old that was arrested for rape, and attempted rape, but another one. This is a youthful offender that's been recently charged with gun possession as well as burglaries. And because we had no secure detention here in this area, he was put in non-secure detention here locally and was given a 12-hour furlough where he committed his crimes.
Chief, let me ask you a question. Is the reason that crime has gone down is because they lessened what violent crime actually is? I mean, because that's a huge thing. Like, you can take these statistics all day long, and they could be twerked and all this stuff. It doesn't necessarily mean that the correlation of crime has gone down because of the way that the law has been passed. It means that crime could have went down because they've now lessened the offenses of what an actual violent crime is. So I think that has to be taken into consideration, because I don't remember 17-year-olds going out and raping women at 6 o'clock at night. I mean, so it's definitely getting worse in the things that I've seen. I will say that. I've seen that, and just, if you can answer that, and then I guess I can kind of jump on to piggyback
Sure, I
on what
mean,
you want to say.
statistics can be twisted in a lot of ways. You know, and I know it's the case, especially the ones coming from the Division of Criminal Justice Services on behalf of the governor's office. I will say this much. I mean, our shooting victims and shooting suspects are younger and younger. They're 16 and 17-year-olds. And they know they're not going to be facing adult charges. Initially, they'll go to adult court, but they'll be thrown into family court, and then it's going to be a slap on the wrist and they're back on the street, and they know that. So there's no real consequences for their behavior.
Imagine if I was let go loose to do whatever I want to do. I mean, kids would be wild. They're not at that age where they're able to think for themselves in the long term of what their actions are going to be. I mean, it's not good either way.
And the frustration, extends not only to our officers, but the officers in the street and the investigators. We see the same people reoffending over and over again. And I tell you, another thing that's entered into the picture when it comes to crime is mental health.
Right. You've seen that with the
All
guy
the
walking
services
with the machete.
in the local area are here in Utica, and that's where they tend to reside. And we're seeing a lot of barricaded subjects, mentally ill, and there's a risk. There's a risk to that person, a risk to the department, and God forbid we don't handle it with kid gloves. I mean,
Listen, I couldn't be a police officer,
Yeah.
I'll tell you that. I mean, it's hard being a
God
teacher
bless
now, and then let alone being out in the street where you have to deal with actual criminals, so on and so forth. But the only other thing I wanted to say, Joe Griffel just put out something, I think it was yesterday or today on Facebook that I had read, pushing for the governor for bail reform and so on and so forth. So actually next Thursday, I know you guys talk with him constantly, outside of, the scope of this council room, but I think it'll be nice to maybe, if this council would be willing, or put in a resolution or something like that, supporting his efforts to try and kind of say, listen, this is how it's affecting our municipality. Yeah, but that was what, 8 years ago? 4 years ago, 5 years? I was here, so it had to be 2016.
No, you weren't here, I was here. If I
was here, you weren't here.
It was,
It was 2020.
they put in another, oh, they put
We
another,
did.
okay, so that must have been when I was exiting that he submitted it.
2020.
He was submitting it.
It was
Yeah,
2020.
he submitted it before.
Yeah, you got the finger.
But either way, yeah, I mean, got the finger, but I mean, at least I think that you're now seeing the actual results over the past 3 years, even from 2020. Over the past month, I gotta
The
even be
numbers
honest
speak
with
for
you.
themselves. They know there's a problem. The governor admitted there's a problem. Hopefully they'll get it corrected, you know, in due time.
Yeah, till somebody else gets
You know,
raped
I
or
know,
something
I
along those
know.
lines.
I
I mean,
mean,
I'm not saying that
what-
these
what-
things
what
didn't
more
happen
can we
before,
do?
but, I mean, a 17-year-old, I mean, they're just now being told that they're allowed to get away with this crime. And
Right.
they're allowed to get away with it in even a worse capacity than they could ever be. If you didn't charge that kid that was 17 years old with the amount of,
Yeah, but it
the amount
has
of,
nothing
the
to
level
do-
of crime that he had, he would have went to family court
I know.
instead of going to criminal court. I mean, that's not
You
normal.
can't blame the city, you can't blame the police department, you
No,
can't
I'm
blame the
saying.
fire department. There's nothing to do with the city of Utica at all. It's something to do with the youth in this city. Some of them don't have any direction at all when they're being brought up, obviously. That's obvious. So we, as a council, and I know they invested, you know, $45 million in Cornhill to have a community center. Maybe we could educate these children, you know, before they get to that 16 years old, 17-year-old age, to say, listen, this is not good here. Let try to change their you know, the direction that they're going in life. And what I understand is the older people that are involved in gangs are using the youth to follow out their task, whatever it is, whatever they're dealing.
I can
So
tell you
that's-
that I
we
work in
have
the
got to
Cornhill
educate
community.
the youth, and it
Okay?
starts with the schools.
And there's only-
It starts what we could do as a council, hopefully get more community centers, get more people
Listen.
involved. I mean, that's what we have to do.
I am
We
going
can't
to tell
blame-
you,
Can I-
I'm
can
not
I
blaming
add
the police
something?
department by any means. I hope you
Mr.
didn't take
DeBrango,
that
can
offense. I just want to finish. Can I say the floor? Just let me finish this one thing.
You get the floor,
I
and
could
then
say, I
Celeste,
could
and
say
then
that I've been
I'm gonna
a,
go around. Anybody
Sure.
have any other questions? We're gonna end this thing.
that I've been a teacher for 5 years now in the Utica City School District, teaching at the same school. And I can't tell you that I've seen anybody from a local non-for-profit or anything like that coming to discuss with these elementary kids or younger kids that need to be talked to, what's going on in the area. So, I mean, where is everybody? I mean, maybe it can't be done in school because you don't want to be subjected to that, but I haven't sent home a flyer with the kid that this is something that could be advocated with. So I think that needs to be addressed too, that it needs to come down from what are the advocates doing that could reach to these children, because I haven't seen anything in the past 4 years, even working, not just Cornhill, anywhere
And
inside the
unfortunately,
Utica district.
it falls on the administration, it falls on the police department. They have to wear so many hats when they're out on that street, and it wasn't that way years ago. But
If
I'm
I
gonna
could
have
address-
Celeste ask a question, then you can go.
Sure.
Chief.
I just wanted
Or
to point
comment.
out that when you look at, so Utica, the city of Utica is the epicenter of lead poisoning in Oneida County, and Oneida County is the epicenter of lead poisoning in the state of New York, and the state of New York is the epicenter of lead poisoning in the country. And Cornhill is the epicenter in the city of New York, in the city of Utica, right? The lead poisoning that takes place in Cornhill is worse than Flint, Michigan, right? And what we know about lead poisoning is that it leads to long-term developmental disabilities, including poor impulse control and poor capacity to like self-regulate your own emotions. So you get angry and you can't do anything about it when you're lead poisoned. So I think when we think about all of the sort of broad, deep, long-term causes of all sorts of problems, not just violence and gun violence and crime, but other things too, poor performance in the
It all
schools,
adds up.
et cetera, right? We really have to look at lead poisoning and the way, and we as a city, you're right, Mr. DeBrango, we can't do anything about bail reform. We could do something about the way in which children are getting poisoned by lead in their homes
We
here in
actually
Utica.
tried to do something
That's
in
a
the
good
city of
point.
Utica and actually got defeated by this body.
Chief, you have the floor.
Well, not when I was on.
You have the floor.
Not when I was on.
I just want to follow up with Councilwoman Colosimo spoke about earlier. When we look at gun violence, it's not just an enforcement piece. There also is a community engagement piece. So what we do is we are one of the few cities, 2 cities that have a pilot program when it comes to community trust, to try to build trust between the community and the police. The meetings are being held monthly right now to rebuild the village on the corner of James and Dudley. And we're starting out with the adults, and we'll soon be trickling down to having participants from the youth as well. hoping to build that trust between police and whatnot. We just have a new SNUG program that's in place. Their focus towards gun violence is a lot different than ours. It's more about a therapeutic approach towards gun violence, trying to convince people that this is not the route, and there might be services that they find a different route to go. We will work with that program. You know, and the other thing is, that was mentioned earlier, as far as Senator DeGriffo, he also reached out to me. He wants to do a ride-along coming up as well. So we'll accommodate him, but there was a meeting this early December with the local police departments in
that, yep.
Senator Griffel's office to address some of the crime problems. And at that time, I think mainly it was put together because of Rome. I know Rome, they had a lot of business owners and residents complained about the rise in crime. So I think it's a symptom that we're seeing all over. And again, the focus is, at that meeting, was put on by law enforcement to the Division of Criminal Justice Service and the state representatives. You gotta do something. Listen, I believe that bail reform, there should have been some type of bail reform. It was just taken way too deep, and it needs to be worked back.
All right. Anybody have any other questions?
I had one last question. What is it with what's the program called with the social worker that we have on, it's a crisis response team?
So we have a crisis response team, and recently we got a grant to add possibly another officer with a social worker. One of the problems we're finding right now, social workers are in big demand right now. We were able to hire one for our current crisis response team that works during the day. They're basically, their main function is to try to reconnect people back to the mental health services that they're disconnected from, and work with all the community providers to get them on board to make sure that they're being treated. It's a good program. It's just that mental health, it's becoming a big issue. It leads to homelessness, substance abuse, and right now, in our area, when there's other municipalities and towns and villages that have homeless, they're driving them and dumping them off air.
Mr. DeBrango, can I ask a question about that?
Yep. One each.
We recently we did this new program that I really like, where we're going to reimburse people who they're training to become a lifeguard so that we can hire lifeguards. One of the things that keeps a lot of people from getting advanced education these days is worrying about student debt, right? So a lot of people aren't going to become social workers because they don't want to rack up all the debt. I think the city could look at, and I'm addressing this to the budget director, look at some programs whereby we help to pay for somebody's education to become a social worker, and in exchange they promise to work for us for 5 years or something like that. And if not, we claw back some of that loan. The SNUG is struggling to find a social worker. You're struggling to find a social worker. Maybe we need to do something to incentivize more people to become social workers.
I just had a meeting with the Neighborhood Center. Through the county, they currently have a program for tuition reimbursement with social workers. They're still having a problem, unfortunately.
We are, yeah.
I don't think, it's not fixing the problem.
Okay, I think we're done. All right, need to come to a close. Thank you, everyone.
Some questions in regard to the fire department contract.
I'm not going to have that here. There's no represent.